Hi chemists. In this video, we are going to talk about how to calculate the molecular formula from empirical formula data. By the end of this video, you should be able to calculate molecular formulas for various compounds giving their percent composition or percent makeup by mass. So first of all, it may be important to discuss what's the difference between a molecular formula and an empirical formula. So if you remember, a molecular formula describes the exact makeup of a molecule, and it may or may not be in the smallest whole number ratio. So this is more common when you have covalent compounds, compounds that share electrons as opposed to the transfer of electrons, which you would see with ionic compounds. Empirical formulas are always written in the smallest whole number ratio. So that's why empirical formulas will often describe ionic compounds. So to determine the molecular formula from empirical formulas, you need to follow these steps. First, you have to determine the empirical formula. So that's really good because you guys are experts at doing that now. The second step is using the formula. Because we know that the molecular formula is going to be basically some factor of which the empirical formula is, we are going to have to use the molar mass of the molecular formula over the molar mass of the empirical formula. That number that you get when you divide the two should be a whole number. If it's not, then you did something wrong. The last step here is to multiply the subscripts in the empirical formula by the whole number that you got in step 2 to get the molecular formula. So let me show you how this works. So this question says, what's the molecular formula for a compound that is 74.0% carbon, 8.70% hydrogen, and 17.3% nitrogen? And the compound has a molar mass of 243.39 grams. So you can see that this problem is a little different than the empirical formula problem because you now have some new information, which is the 24.39 grams. And so that is going to indicate to you this must be a molecular formula calculation. The first step is to calculate the empirical formula. So we're going to follow the poem. Percent to mass, mass to moles, next step is to divide by small. So 1.23 is the smallest mole answer. And we should be getting whole numbers here, but like we said, if we don't, then we'd have to multiply by whole. But in this case, we got all numbers that are whole. There's no decimals. So that means we can move on to the next step, which is these are the subscripts for the compound. So that means that we have it be C5H7N. So that's the empirical formula. But this question wants the molecular formula. And so what we said we have to do is we have to divide the molecular formula molar mass by the empirical formula molar mass. And again, the reason why we're doing that is because we know that the molecular formula has to be some factor at which the empirical formula is. So I'll calculate the molar masses. So that's the molar mass for the empirical formula. And then I'm going to divide the molecular formula by the empirical formula mass. And so again, this should give you a whole number. If it doesn't, you did something wrong and you need to go back and check your math. So fortunately, it gave us a whole number, so that means we probably did it right. And then this is the factor by which I need to multiply all the subscripts in the empirical formula by. So I'm going to multiply the 3 times the 5, the 3 times the 7, and the 3 times the 1 for the nitrogen. And so this will now be the molecular formula of the compound. Okay, you are on your own now. Make sure you practice, and I know you're going to do a great job with the rest of this unit. Thank you so much for watching, chemists.